What if the samurai trained like Spartans? A 7-year-old boy is torn from his mother's arms. He's beaten, starved, and forced to fight other children for food. He sleeps outside in winter. He learns to kill before he learns to read. This is Sparta, the most brutal military training system in ancient history. Now imagine that system transplanted to feudal Japan. Samurai warriors, already legendary for discipline and skill, subjected to Spartan methods from childhood. The fusion of two warrior cultures, each terrifying in their own right. What kind of warrior would emerge? What would it do to Japanese society? And could Japan's enemies survive the result? This is a fictional scenario exploring what happens when you combine Spartan training brutality with samurai warrior philosophy. If you want to see how this cultural fusion would create the most lethal fighting force in history, and what it would cost, subscribe now. Because what we're about to explore isn't just hypothetical. It's a glimpse into how warrior cultures shape entire civilizations. Let's dive in. First, we need to understand what Spartan training actually involved. The agoge wasn't just military school. It was state-sponsored child abuse designed to produce soldiers who valued death over dishonor. At age 7, boys were taken from their families and organized into groups called agilai. They were deliberately underfed to teach them to steal food. Getting caught meant punishment, not for stealing, but for incompetence. They fought each other regularly. Older boys brutalized younger ones to build aggression and pain tolerance. They slept outside with minimal clothing, even in winter. They were beaten with whips in public ceremonies to test pain endurance. Education was minimal, reading, writing, and music only as needed for military function. The focus was singular: create soldiers who never retreat, never surrender, and never question orders. By age 20, surviving Spartans were the most disciplined, physically capable, and psychologically hardened warriors in the ancient world. They were also emotionally stunted, functionally illiterate beyond basic needs, and completely dependent on the state for identity. This was the price of military perfection. Traditional samurai training was completely different. It began around age 5, but within the family structure, not state institutions. Boys learned from their fathers, clan elders, and specialized instructors. The curriculum was broad. Martial arts, including swordsmanship, archery, horsemanship, and unarmed combat, but also calligraphy, poetry, tea ceremony, strategy, and philosophy. Samurai were expected to be cultured warriors, equally comfortable composing poetry or leading cavalry charges. The underlying philosophy was Bushido, the way of the warrior. It emphasized loyalty, honor, self-discipline, and acceptance of death. But unlike Spartan training, which used external brutality to forge warriors, Bushido relied on internal cultivation. Samurai trained themselves through meditation, ritual, and philosophical study. The result was warriors who were deadly, but also administrators, poets, and philosophers. Samurai weren't just fighters. They were the ruling class of Japan, managing estates, collecting taxes, and governing provinces. Now imagine replacing this system with the Spartan agoge. In our alternate timeline, a radical daimyo in the Sengoku period, around 1550 CE, implements Spartan-style training in his domain. Perhaps he's read Portuguese translations of classical texts and sees strategic advantage in adopting foreign methods. At age 7, boys from samurai families are removed from their homes. They're organized into training groups under adult instructors who are themselves products of this system. The traditional father-to-son transmission of skills is severed. The training is deliberately harsh. Boys are underfed and expected to supplement their rations through foraging or theft. They engage in full-contact combat training with wooden weapons, resulting in regular injuries. Winter training happens outdoors in minimal clothing. Pain tolerance is built through progressive brutalization. But here's where it diverges from pure Spartan replication. Japanese culture can't completely abandon its philosophical foundations. Even in this militarized system, elements of Bushido remain. Boys still learn about honor, loyalty to their lord, and the spiritual dimension of combat. They still practice meditation and study strategy. The result is a hybrid: Spartan physical conditioning and psychological hardening, combined with samurai philosophy and tactical sophistication. By age 20, these Spartan-trained samurai are fundamentally different from traditional samurai. Physically, they're superior. The Spartan emphasis on constant physical training, minimal comfort, and survival skills produces warriors with exceptional endurance, pain tolerance, and adaptability. They can march farther, fight longer, and survive harsher conditions than traditional samurai. Tactically, they're more cohesive. Spartan training emphasized unit cohesion over individual glory. The phalanx worked because every soldier trusted the man beside him completely. Samurai Spartan warriors maintain this group mentality while retaining Japanese tactical flexibility. Psychologically, they're ruthless. The emotional hardening that comes from childhood brutalization creates warriors who don't hesitate, don't show mercy, and don't break under pressure. Combined with Bushido's acceptance of death, these warriors are nearly impossible to intimidate. But they've lost something critical: the cultural breadth that made traditional samurai effective rulers. They can fight brilliantly. They can't govern effectively. They have no artistic cultivation, limited literacy, and poor diplomatic skills. They're perfect soldiers. They're terrible administrators. When this daimyo's army faces traditional samurai forces, the difference is immediately apparent. Traditional samurai warfare in the Sengoku period involved significant individual combat, with warriors seeking personal glory through single combat and distinctive performance. Units often broke cohesion as samurai pursued individual objectives. Spartan-trained samurai don't break ranks. They fight as units with perfect discipline. When ordered to hold position, they hold until death. When ordered to advance, they advance together. This transforms Japanese battlefield tactics. The daimyo's forces win consistently. Not because they're individually superior warriors, traditional samurai are highly skilled, but because their unit cohesion and discipline are unmatched. They execute complex maneuvers flawlessly. They don't retreat or panic. Within 20 years, neighboring domains begin copying the system. The competitive pressure of feudal Japan means military innovations spread rapidly. By 1580, Spartan-style training is becoming standard among progressive daimyo. But this military success comes with devastating social consequences. The traditional samurai class was Japan's educated elite. They preserved culture, patronized arts, wrote literature, and governed provinces. When you strip away their cultural education and focus purely on military training, you create a leadership vacuum. Governance deteriorates. Spartan-trained samurai can conquer territory, but struggle to administer it. Tax collection becomes erratic. Justice is brutal rather than measured. Cultural production declines as the patron class loses interest in art and literature. The emotional cost is equally severe. Traditional samurai training, while demanding, occurred within family structures that provided emotional support. Spartan training deliberately severs family bonds, to create loyalty to the state above all else. Generations of warriors grow up emotionally stunted, unable to form normal human relationships, and psychologically dependent on military hierarchy for identity. Japanese society becomes militarized in ways that make historical Japan, already warrior-focused, look gentle by comparison. By 1600, when Tokugawa Ieyasu historically unified Japan and established the shogunate, this alternate Japan looks radically different. The military is more effective. Japanese armies using Spartan training principles are possibly the most disciplined fighting force in the world at that time. When Europeans arrive with firearms, Spartan-trained samurai adapt the technology faster and integrate it more effectively than historical samurai did. But culturally, Japan is impoverished. The golden age of samurai culture, no theater, tea ceremony, landscape painting, philosophical development, either never happens or happens at drastically reduced scale. The warrior poet ideal that defined the samurai is replaced by the warrior soldier. When the Tokugawa peace is eventually established, you have a society of highly trained warriors with nothing to do. Historically, samurai became bureaucrats, scholars, and cultural figures during peacetime. Spartan-trained warriors lack those skills. They're dangerous and purposeless, a recipe for internal instability. This thought experiment reveals something uncomfortable. Military effectiveness and cultural sophistication often work at cross purposes. Sparta produced superior soldiers by sacrificing everything else. They had minimal art, literature, or philosophy. They contributed almost nothing to Western civilization beyond military tactics and the legend of the 300 at Thermopylae. Traditional samurai were less militarily efficient, but culturally invaluable. They created enduring art, literature, philosophy, and governance systems. They were warriors, but they were also so much more. Forcing samurai through Spartan training creates better soldiers, but worse human beings. You gain tactical advantage, but lose cultural depth. The warriors become tools rather than leaders. The samurai system, for all its flaws, recognized something the Spartans missed. Warriors who only know war become liabilities in peacetime. By insisting samurai be educated, cultured, and philosophically sophisticated, Japan created a warrior class that could function as a ruling elite for centuries. Adding Spartan training methods would create short-term military dominance, but long-term social dysfunction. The perfect soldier is not the perfect human, and societies need both warriors and poets, soldiers and scholars. The historical samurai understood this balance. They trained brutally, but also composed poetry. They studied death, but also appreciated beauty. They could kill efficiently, but also govern justly. That balance, uncomfortable and imperfect as it was, proved more sustainable than Sparta's single-minded militarism. Now I want to hear from you. If you had to choose, would you rather have Spartan-trained samurai who are tactically superior but culturally limited, or traditional samurai who are more well-rounded but less militarily efficient? And do you think modern special forces training resembles the Spartan or samurai model more? Drop your analysis in the comments. And if this fictional scenario made you think differently about warrior cultures, share it with someone who thinks military training is just about physical toughness. Because it never is. It's always about what kind of society you're trying to build.